Good grief, folks. Warren Morningstar has been at AOPA almost 28 years, and he's decided to retire. So, buddy, I can relate.
Well, you can, but you got more years than I do.
By a little bit. Yeah, but you've had some incredible experiences here and done a lot for the association and for AOPA members. But let's talk about first, how'd you get here? Where did you learn to fly?
Well, I learned to fly in Salt Lake, flying a 150 or a 152 in the mountains, which seemed perfectly normal to me.
Right.
And then later on, I picked up an instrument and commercial rating and multi-engine rating.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then you moved into a broadcast career. Most people here see you as video, but you had kind of a bit of a start and go, or
sort of a mixed career. Yeah. I did public relations for the Utah Highway Department, and then I ran away and joined the Foreign Service and spent some time in both Africa and Latin America. And came back to Salt Lake and went into television news.
Oh, okay.
And then it was there was an ad in the old America Online for a media relations director at AOPA some 28 years ago.
Wow.
And my wife at the time had found it, and she said, "This is perfect for you, flying media."
Yeah.
So I applied and came and worked. Initially as the media relations director, and had some interesting times because we had Jessica Dubroff and JFK Jr. and 9/11. Spent a lot of time on the phone with a lot of media outlets.
Yeah, we had a lot of high-profile accidents there for a while, and you were very, very involved in working with the media on that. But ultimately, the web continued to mature, and we were able to do video and that sort of thing. And you had a vision for video on the web.
Well, I did. And I credit my daughter for this because she's a millennial, and I had asked her one time if she'd seen a particular TV show, and she said, "No, I don't. We don't have cable." And I said, "Well, then what do you watch?" And she said, "Well, we just watch online." And the light bulb went off and said, all right, this is how we've got to get to some of the younger folks is doing some video, because they are, much more engaged with video than us old farts were. And so I, made the pitches to start doing video. And initially we were just putting individual things up on the web, but then I made the pitch for AOPA Live This Week, a weekly show, and which you were the anchor for the entire run of that show, and had a pretty good run with that.
Yeah, really did. And we've been to some fascinating places and done some really cool stuff together.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned learning to fly in the mountains, and I noticed among all of the ones that seem to be most interesting to you, there's kind of a mountain theme there.
Yeah, I guess I really do like flying in the mountains. I mean, one of the most memorable stories I did was flying in the Alps.
Oh, wow.
And landing and taking off from what the French call an altiport. And you got a runway slope about like this, and when you would land, as soon as you touched down, you went to full throttle so that you could taxi up the slope and get to the parking area. That was fascinating. Of course, you and I flew in the mountains in New Zealand.
We did. Yeah, that was incredible. And the fjords and
everything.
Yeah, and out over White Island, I guess, where the volcano was.
Yeah, over the volcano and looking down and seeing the stuff sort of bubbling down in there.
Yeah, that was pretty fascinating. And we've done some mountain flying in Alaska, in the Copper River Valley, places like that. But been a lot of other ones. What are some of your other favorite stories?
Oh gosh, well, I think another one of my favorite ones was just sort of a serendipitous story. My wife and I were on vacation in France, and I overheard these guys talking about this kind of airplane museum. This was outside of Bonn, France. So, I went up and asked them about it, and they told me where it was. And I had been in Germany for Aero Friedrichshafen, so I had the camera gear with me. So we drove out, and there is this chateau with this huge collection of Mirages and other interesting aircraft, and a guy who was just a fantastic interview. And there it was. I mean, I called the piece Chateau d'Avion. The French are known for their passion. And here in the middle of the Burgundy wine country, we found a man with three passions: wine, racing, and fighter aircraft. Some people collect stamps. Some collect postcards. Michel Pont collects models and race cars, motorcycles, tractors, and fighters.
Thank you for coming to Burgundy and Chateau Savigny-les-Bains, and to learn about my passion and perhaps my folly.
De mes folies même, puisque
Monsieur Pont has been a winemaker since age 15.
parce qu'à l'école j'étais nul.
I was a very bad student at school, so my father told me to make a vineyard.
Il m'a dit tu vas aller, tu feras un vigneron.
And 33 years ago, he bought the historic Chateau de Savigny-les-Bains and its 44 acres of Grand Cru vineyards. He also started collecting motorcycles and race cars. And then,
Et que j'avais dans la tête
I had in my head images of aviation, and aided by the French government, I was able to obtain an aircraft. The army minister offered me a Mirage as a gift.
le don d'un avion. Le ministre des Armées de l'époque m'a offert un Mirage 3, comme cadeau.
and between gifts and purchases, he's accumulated some 83 fighters, or avions de chasse.
J'ai acheté des avions en Russie, dans les pays de l'Est, en Pologne.
I've bought aircraft in Russia, in the East, in Poland, in Czechoslovakia, and Djibouti. In Djibouti, I bought the Super Sabre 100. I bought 4 at once.
Quatre à la fois. Quatre avions.
Governments and private individuals have donated as well.
Monsieur Dassault, Serge Dassault, qui est connu dans le monde entier, a eu vent
Sergei Dassault got wind that there was a crazy winemaker in Burgundy who was pretentious enough to collect Dassault aircraft. He flew here in his helicopter, fell on his knees in front of the aircraft and said, "Monsieur Pont, I want to thank you and give you the prototypes of a Mirage 3C and 3A."
dans les hangars, les prototypes. Les prototypes, un Mirage 3C et un Mirage 3A.
He employs a small staff to restore the aircraft, but Monsieur Pont's museum is completely private. He gets no government subsidies.
Je ne veux pas de subvention.
I don't want them. I want to remain free.
The admission fee for his museum is modest, 10 euros, and it includes all of Monsieur Pont's collections and, of course, the opportunity to taste and buy any of the 7 vintages produced on the estate. Monsieur Pont is a man of many passions, but surprisingly, he's not a pilot.
J'étais pilote de voiture de course.
So I'm a race car pilot, but not a plane pilot. Knowing that I'm crazy, I can just see myself taking off in an aircraft without checking fuel or weather, and then
Au-dessus l'avion, tchoup, et voilà.
In the Burgundy wine region near Beaune, France, I'm Warren Morningstar, AOPA Live.
Wow. Yeah. And another big rock you flew by, I remember that you seemed to really be enjoying, was Grand Teton. We did that
Yes.
fairly recently.
Yeah,
Actually.
that was another interesting story because that was my first flight in a Kit Fox.
Oh yeah.
And so we're flying, doing a little mountain flying with the Kit Fox. And I do have to put a disclaimer on that because actually we probably flew a little lower than we should have because that's a national park. But I thought the guy who was with me who was instructing would know better. But,
Right. But you still got some great stuff.
Oh, got some wonderful video. This great or what? Winding around the peaks of the Grand Tetons in Wyoming? But it isn't the kind of thing you should try without first getting the proper training.
The key to proceeding up a canyon or en route is always give yourself an option to turn around.
Paul Liederbrand runs Stick and Rudder Aviation near Boise, Idaho. He is the factory-endorsed training facility for Kit Fox, and he specializes in teaching pilots backcountry flying skills.
But we will want to fly on one side of the canyon so that we have room to turn around. We might want to fly on the upwind or sunny side of the canyon.
Right. That upslope wind or the thermals are going to add to your lift. Downdrafts in a canyon are really no fun. Now, the key to flying in a canyon is to make sure you always have room to turn around.
At this point, it's not an escape maneuver. It's just we're not comfortable. We're not liking the weather conditions, we're not liking the turbulence, and we're not liking the routing of the canyon, and we may have made a mistake, and so we're going to turn around.
Paul teaches pilots to fly at what he calls canyon speed. Now that's something less than cruise speed. It may be a maneuvering speed or flap extension speed depending upon your aircraft. You want a lower speed so you can make a tighter turn under control.
And typically most pilots overbank, increasing the stall speed and the load on the airplane.
30 degrees is your target bank.
But when crossing a ridge, we want to always cross at a tangent to allow us to have the ability to turn away without a 90-degree turn. Would be preferably about a 30-degree bank turn to turn away to in case you had a downdraft as you were crossing the ridge.
And cross over the flattest part of the ridge. That saddle or canyon cut just might be turbulent.
The saddle is a Venturi effect. Saddle is where the winds are increased.
Now, no matter how remote the canyon might be, there can still be wires across it. So look for poles on the sides of the canyon and...
rather than trying to see the wires, the poles, and then if you want to cross over a set of wires, the place to cross over is at the pole. There's nothing that's going to be above you at the pole.
And how do you know if you're going to clear that ridge ahead of you? Watch the terrain behind it. If the far terrain is rising and the ridge in front is descending in your view, then you're above the ridge. And pay attention to density altitude. This day we were at about 10,000 feet density altitude down in these canyons. Now the Kit Fox is turbocharged and we still had a lot of performance, but a normally aspirated aircraft would have a lot less. Fly in the morning or late afternoon when it's cooler and have fun. More on Morningstar, AOPA Live.
Yeah.
Oh, and let's see. Normandy. You know,
what a great trip that was. The 75th anniversary of D-Day.
Yes.
Being in England, and then I flew a DC-3 over.
Yeah, well, I went through the channel.
Well, that was kind of a cool experience. But you got to see the guys jump out of the parachute.
See the parachute jumpers onto Normandy, onto one of the areas where they had jumped in World War II, including a World War II veteran who did a jump.
Jeez. Yeah.
Now, I mean, it was a tandem jump.
Yeah, still.
But even so, this was a paratrooper from World War II who made that jump.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. And we've gotten to fly some pretty incredible aircraft of one sort or another over the years, too. I think one of the highlights for me, and maybe for you, too, was a little bit of blimp-to-blimp photography when we did a kind of air-to-air mission by happenstance with a couple of Zeppelins for Goodyear.
Yes, we did. Yeah, I've been able to do stories on both the Goodyear blimp and the Goodyear Zeppelin.
Right.
Of course, you got to fly the Zeppelin.
And the blimp, but I mean, not that I'm bragging.
Not that you're bragging.
Right.
Yeah, and that's always been sort of, I've always been the bridesmaid, never the bride when we go out and do a story because, you get to fly it.
Right.
I take the pictures. I mean, you flew the F-35 simulator.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not your father's blimp. It's not a blimp at all. This is an NT series semi-rigid airship designed by Zeppelin in Germany. So the Goodyear blimp is now, well, technically not a blimp, but everybody's still going to call it that. But you could call it something else.
But I like to think of it as kind of the most impressive home built there is. It takes 9 guys about 9 months to a year to put one of these things together. And because of that, it literally is a custom build.
Custom built in Goodyear's century-old blimp hangar near Akron, Ohio. This is home for Wingfoot 3. The other airships are based in Pompano Beach, Florida and Carson, California. But it just so happened that when we were there, all 3 airships were there too. Wingfoot 2 undergoing annual inspection, Wingfoot 1 dropping in for some light maintenance and crew training, and Wingfoot 3 finishing certification flights. It's hard to imagine the size of these things. The NT airship is nearly as long as a football field, and it weighs more than 19,000 pounds. And that's before the helium is added, of course. 3 Lycomings drive 4 props. There are 2 props for the engine and the tail. And they all swivel, making the NT airship highly maneuverable, at least compared to the old blimps.
So even though this one is 55 feet longer than the old ones were just rudders in the back. So we had elevators and rudders for up and down and left and right control, and when we got close to the ground, if you didn't have enough airflow, you really relied on your crew to help you keep in the right spot, keep yourself lined up right on winds. We can't correct for a crosswind like an airplane because we don't have wings. This one here is much more maneuverable. There's an aft engine that gives you 2 propellers that help you with pitch and yaw, even when you're sitting in no wind configuration. So the fins are still working, but the thrust vectoring is really doing the bulk of the work.
And this nimble new airship can operate with a smaller crew.
We don't need 15 guys to go out and catch us anymore, but you also don't have that help of that team out there. The feel is a little bit different of it, and then just the challenge of keeping it in the right spot and right where you want it all the time is significantly different than the old ones.
The old blimps required a lot of physical effort to fly. The NTs are fly-by-wire, side stick, no rudder pedals, and the cockpit looks like something out of a business jet. But you don't learn this aircraft like a jet.
We do it all in the aircraft since there aren't simulators for blimps.
And to state the obvious, this doesn't fly like an airplane.
But really flying the airship in general is like flying a boat. And so if you can imagine flying a boat with the tendencies of that up and down and wandering around.
For takeoff, swivel the forward propellers up, the back propeller down, and back away from the mast. Change the vector and climb out like a helicopter. Change the vector to cruise, and you're an airplane with the joystick as the primary control. But it's really easy to over-control. Let's just say the response to control inputs is not sprightly. Vectored thrust means the NT airships can hover in place, something the old ships couldn't do. It's a flying experience like no other. And if you'd like to get a job flying the Goodyear airship,
we don't usually find people that can fly the blimp right off the street. So what we're looking for is a commercial pilot, typically with an instrument rating, usually a multi-engine rating as well, and about 1,200 hours, 1,250, something like that. And then we bring them in and we'll train you on the airship from there. So if there's interest in being an airship pilot, it's a lot more the PR and management side. It's a lot of things that you typically don't get pilots doing, especially today's career track pilot. Building those people skills, having that want and enjoy being out in the public eye and interacting with the people really is a big need.
And Mike Doherty will be your examiner. He's the only DE in the country.
And there's one guy in the FAA that does what I do, and we gave him his airship rating last year, and I did this check ride for him. So,
Tom Haines, AOPA Live.
Another great trip was the Beech 18 on floats.
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of fun. Flying from an airplane on straight floats, a big old radial engine one at that, from Minnesota to Florida on straight floats, having to land on water because you can't get, and having to get fuel and everything we need, from off the water. It was pretty remarkable.
The first thing you learn about seaplane flying is that nothing, and I do mean nothing, happens fast.
Once you get on the water, you got no brakes, so docking, securing the planes, fueling on straight floats is always a challenge.
Fueling is just one of the many concerns you have when flying cross-country in airplanes that can only land on water.
Every landing site has to be evaluated individually, and it's not like an airport where you can assume it's clear water. We look for stumps in the water, lines across the rivers, and of course wind conditions.
We are a flight of 5 seaplanes, including AOPA President Mark Baker in his Beech 18 on straight floats. And like geese, we're headed south for the winter. From the cold of Minnesota to Florida sunshine, following the Mississippi for some of the trip. Ryan Skanke runs Adventure Seaplanes, and every year he moves his airplanes south so pilots can train during the winter.
Well, I started moving the airplanes back and forth to Florida 9 years ago, and I figured what a great way for my students to gain experience and do a reduced cost moving the airplanes. And as you see on this trip, Tom, there's all kinds of different docking situations, rivers, obstacles. So it's a great learning environment and a great adventure trip.
Joshua Reddereth is a former Marine fighter pilot, but on this trip, he's a student and loving every minute of it.
It's fantastic. I mean, the experience going from, just as opposed to doing the training at one individual place, we're getting the cross-country experience along, getting to pick out different lakes and stuff like that along the way. So it's a good experience.
Rivers, lakes, lagoons, we experienced them all on the 3-day trip.
And there was one part of that story that I thought was really kind of fun, because at one point I needed to get out to the aircraft with all of my gear. And so I sort of felt like a princess, because I was in a little boat and you and Martin Baker were in the water pulling me in the boat over to the airplane.
Yes, and I was in chest waders that were leaking. And the water's coming up, and my boots are filling up as we wade out to the airplane and towing you in a canoe or a boat of some sort. But that was quite an experience.
But there have been so many wonderful stories that I've been able to do with AOPA, and I'm so glad that we've been able to, using video, to be able to share them with our audience, and I hope inspire people to go out and do some things with their airplanes.
Oh, I'm certain. I know that people have been inspired by your work at AOPA and the things that you've done, and sort of the cutting edge, the approach that you've taken to video production for web purposes have served AOPA very well over the years. And so we're, as both as a longtime employee and as an AOPA member, I'm grateful for the body of work that you've created, the leadership that you've provided, and all the things you've done to keep AOPA on the forefront of media in the aviation space.
Well, thank you very much. It has been, as I said at the beginning, a wonderful ride, and I treasure every moment of it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to miss you.
Well, they're going to miss you too.
Well, but your hand on the tiller back there, from a media standpoint, from the video standpoint, has been very important over the years, and so it'll be missed. But I'm sure you got lots of great plans.
But again, I have to give kudos to you, because it was your leadership that when I had the vision, when I said I want to do this, you made it possible.
Yeah. Well, only because I thought I knew that you could pull it off. So. But congratulations. What are your plans? What are you going to do?
Well, we're going to take it a little bit easy for a few weeks, and then there's the honey-do list.
Beth has got a big one, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then we want to do some traveling. And interestingly, this is one of these things for people who live outside the area may not understand this, but been outside of Washington D.C. for 30 years, and there are all the great things that one can do in Washington. Right. But because you live so close, you say you never really get around to doing it, because it's always there. Well, we've decided that we're going to play like tourists and say, okay, this week we're going to pretend like we are visiting Washington D.C. or we're visiting Baltimore, or we're visiting Philadelphia.
Yeah, Gettysburg,
and all of that.
Yeah.
So and then we hope to do some more traveling, get back to Europe. Particularly after our experience in Normandy. We've always loved France, but Normandy was particularly special, especially because they like Americans in Normandy.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Well, Warren, congratulations again. I'm sure you're going to do great things in your next phase. And we'll miss you, but happy for you and Beth to be able to have this opportunity to go out and do some other things.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey Warren, congratulations on your retirement. First of all, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to work at AOPA. Since you hired me back in 2014, I've had so many amazing opportunities to meet all the incredible people in this industry and tell their story, and it's been a super rewarding career. It also gave me the opportunity to learn to fly, which is something I always wanted to do, so I'm really grateful for that. I just really appreciate all of your hard work building AOPA video over the years into something that's well known and respected in the industry. And so I just really wish you and Beth the best going forward. I hope that you have lots of good time to spend together, enjoy traveling, and just getting to spend more time together. And I'm sure I'll still see you around the airport.
Well, Hefe, what a really good run you've had here. I can't tell you how much fun it's been to work for you for the last 11 years. We have done some amazing work here together under your leadership. We've had content from 6 out of the 7 continents of the planet on our air. under your leadership, all because you had the vision to create a video digest show for general aviation. It goes back to 2005. I can't get over this demo. Take a look. You put this together in 2005, visioning the use of video to communicate to pilots. And look at what we've done with your vision since then. I am so proud of it. I'm so happy to have been a part of it. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for hiring me out of television news to come run away with this fun adventure. And thank you for everything you've done. Stay in touch, and best wishes, my friend.